Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you slowly disappeared while trying to keep them happy? Imagine waking up every day already worried about someone else's feelings before you even think about your own. This is the story of a woman who believed love meant endless sacrifice, until one life-changing decision taught her that real love can exist without guilt. Before we continue, here's a small request. If you're enjoying this story, please like, follow, and subscribe to stay connected and never miss a new story. The day Claire chose herself. Claire Bennett had always believed that family came before everything else. Ever since she was a little girl, she admired her mother with all her heart. Her mother had worked long hours, skipped vacations, worn old clothes so Claire could have new ones, and spent years making sure her daughter never felt alone. Claire grew up hearing that families should always stand together, no matter what. Those lessons stayed with her long after she became an adult. She carried them into every decision she made, promising herself that she would always repay her mother's sacrifices with love, loyalty, and endless support. As the years passed, Claire built a successful career as a graphic designer. She loved creating beautiful things and dreamed of opening her own design studio one day. She had a cozy apartment, a few close friends, and a peaceful routine that she tried very hard to protect. But despite everything she had accomplished, there was one part of her life that constantly felt overwhelming. Her mother called every single day. The calls always started the same way. Sometimes it was early in the morning before Claire had even finished breakfast. Other times it happened during work meetings, while she was driving home, cooking dinner, reading a book, or trying to relax before bed. Some days there were only 3 calls. Other days there were 8 or 9. If Claire answered immediately, the conversations lasted a long time. If she couldn't answer because she was busy, another call followed, then another, until she finally picked up. Whenever Claire apologized, her mother would sigh and quietly say, "I guess you're too busy for me now." Those simple words always filled Claire with guilt. She would immediately explain herself, even though she had done nothing wrong. She would promise to visit soon, promise to call more often, promise to make more time. Every promise temporarily made things better, but within a day or two the cycle started all over again. Slowly, without realizing it, Claire's entire life began revolving around avoiding her mother's disappointment. She stopped making spontaneous weekend plans because she worried about missing phone calls. During work, she secretly checked her phone every few minutes. If she saw several missed calls, her heart immediately started racing. Even while spending time with friends, she struggled to stay present because part of her mind was always wondering whether her mother was upset with her. The stress followed her everywhere. She became tired more often. She struggled to concentrate at work. Small problems suddenly felt enormous because emotionally, she was already exhausted before each day even began. One Friday evening, after an especially demanding week, Claire decided she deserved a quiet weekend. She bought fresh flowers for her apartment, prepared her favorite meal, lit a scented candle, and planned to spend 2 peaceful days doing absolutely nothing except resting. For the first time in months, she felt completely relaxed. The next morning, she woke up smiling. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat near the window while watching sunlight slowly brighten the city streets below. Then her phone rang. Her mother's name appeared on the screen. Claire answered with a cheerful voice. Before she could finish saying hello, her mother asked, "Why didn't you call me first this morning?" Claire looked at the clock. It wasn't even 9 o'clock yet. She gently replied, "I just woke up a little while ago." There was a long silence. Then came words Claire had heard so many times before. "I suppose you don't need me anymore." Something inside Claire quietly broke. She wasn't angry. She wasn't frustrated. She was simply exhausted. After ending the call, she placed her phone on the table and stared out the window. The beautiful morning she had looked forward to suddenly felt heavy. Tears slowly rolled down her face as she realized something she had never admitted before. She wasn't living freely anymore. She was living in fear. Fear of disappointing someone she loved. Fear of saying no. Fear of putting herself first. That afternoon, Claire took a long walk through a nearby park. Families laughed together. Children played. Birds flew between the trees while the wind gently moved the leaves above her. Looking around, she wondered when she had last felt that peaceful inside. She couldn't remember. That evening, she sat quietly in her apartment and reflected on the past several years. She remembered birthdays she had rushed through because she needed to answer another phone call. Vacations interrupted by endless conversations. Quiet evenings that ended in guilt instead of rest. She suddenly realized something painful. She had spent years trying to earn a feeling that never lasted. No matter how much she gave, it was never enough. The next morning, Claire opened her journal and wrote one question across an empty page. Am I responsible for someone else's happiness? She stared at those words for several minutes. For the first time, she answered honestly. No. The answer felt uncomfortable, but it also felt freeing. Over the next week, Claire made one small decision. She would still answer her mother's calls. She would still visit often. She would still listen, care, and love with all her heart. But she would stop abandoning herself every single time the phone rang. If she was working, she would call back later. If she was resting, she would finish resting first. If she was enjoying time with friends, she would stay present instead of apologizing for living her own life. The first few days were incredibly difficult. Her mother noticed the change immediately. You've changed, Claire calmly replied. I'm trying to create a healthier balance. Her mother didn't understand. Sometimes she became quiet. Sometimes she sounded disappointed. Sometimes she ended conversations early. Each reaction filled Claire with guilt, but instead of giving up, she reminded herself of something important. Love should never require someone to lose themselves. Weeks passed, then months. Slowly, the conversations began changing. Instead of speaking several times a day, they spoke once every evening. Instead of conversations centered around guilt, they slowly began talking about memories, hobbies, favorite recipes, books they had both enjoyed, and funny moments from childhood. For the first time in years, Claire looked forward to answering the phone instead of fearing it. Something inside both of them had quietly changed. Claire smiled more often. She laughed more easily. Her creativity returned. She finally opened the small freelance design business she had dreamed about for years. She traveled without constantly checking her phone. She enjoyed peaceful mornings without anxiety. Most importantly, she stopped measuring her worth by how successfully she managed another person's emotions. One autumn evening, Claire sat on her apartment balcony wrapped in a blanket while colorful leaves drifted through the cool air. She watched the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange, pink, and gold. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Claire answered with a genuine smile. They talked for a while about ordinary things: the weather, a favorite family recipe, flowers blooming in the garden, and a movie they both wanted to watch. When the conversation ended, Claire noticed something remarkable. She didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel emotionally drained. She simply felt grateful. That single moment showed her how much both of them had grown. Claire realized that boundaries had never been walls separating two hearts. They had been bridges leading to a healthier relationship. She finally understood that protecting her peace didn't mean loving her mother less. It meant loving both her mother and herself honestly. Because when love is built on respect instead of fear, it becomes lighter. When kindness replaces guilt, conversations become warmer. When freedom replaces obligation, relationships become stronger. Years later, Claire often looked back on that difficult season of her life with gratitude. It had taught her one of the greatest lessons she would ever learn: that caring for someone should never require abandoning yourself. The people who truly love you may not understand your boundaries immediately, but genuine love has room to grow, to adapt, and to become healthier over time. Claire discovered that peace is not something you find after everyone else is happy. Peace begins the moment you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. From that day forward, she chose love without fear, kindness without guilt, and compassion without sacrificing herself. In doing so, she didn't lose her family. She finally found herself. Real love doesn't ask you to lose yourself. Healthy boundaries protect your peace, strengthen relationships, and remind you that caring for others should never come at the cost of your own happiness. As Claire looked toward the horizon with a heart that was finally calm, she realized that the greatest gift she could give both herself and her mother was a relationship built on respect instead of guilt. Sometimes the strongest act of love is not giving more of yourself. It is having the courage to protect your own peace. And when you finally learn that lesson, you don't just change one relationship. You change your entire life forever. This is the end of the story.